Hello and welcome to the Green Profit Academy Pros podcast. This show digs into the challenges in growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit. I'm Christeen.
And I'm Steve Bousquet. We are the green industry experts in profit, growth, and leadership. Hey, Christeen, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I am really well. It's a Monday. It's a beautiful day here in Connecticut. It's about 74 degrees. It's sunny. So we're starting the week off really well.
That sounds nice. We've been getting a ton of rain here, and my husband is worried if he's ever going to be able to mow his lawn again. So we're having some lawn anxiety around our house right now, but everything around us is really green and beautiful. So I like looking outside. It's all kinds of shades of green out that window.
Yeah, it's beautiful in the spring, and it's my favorite time of the year, spring and fall. And speaking of like lawn anxiety around getting to mow the lawn, right? So today we're talking about the 100 Days of Hell. And what is the 100 Days of Hell, and how does it affect the owner, the employees, and the business?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting topic because it is industry specific. It's to the people that we serve. And there's a lot of things that could happen right now that are extremely overwhelming. They may make you question whether or not you even want to continue in this industry because it could be a huge pinch point right now. There's challenges, just all kinds of stuff going on. So there's a reason for this name. So Steve, what is the 100 Days of Hell? Please enlighten us.
The 100 Days of Hell is in the green industry, lawn care and landscape businesses, and hardscape it's that time from the very end of March into that very first, like the July 4th weekend. So it's about 100 days when if you're in the lawn care landscape industry, that's when we're working the hardest. That's when we have more leads than we can get to. There's more phone calls. There's things that we're running jobs, setting up new estimating, setting up. We're bringing on new employees. We're bringing on new clients. The trucks that we thought were ready to start the spring, that's where we find when they start to break down. Tires that we thought were good go flat. Employees don't show up. It rains 4 days a week. So it's the time of the year where we're working really hard every day to keep everything going. There's a lot of demand on us. There's a lot of new signups. And it's just the time of the year that we're like working all day, doing estimates at night, doing estimates on Saturday, trying to do quotes first thing in the morning or late in the day or whenever we can get those written up and get those out. So the 100 Days of Hell is the time of the year that, it's kind of the Christmas season for retail, but in the green industry.
Wow. That sounds amazing. Sign me up.
Sounds like a good time. And, I've been in the green industry for 40 years. I've been in the lawn care landscape business. I've owned my own business for 40 years. And it's a badge of warriorship. Like you are a warrior to make it through the 100 Days of Hell year after year after year. And somehow you always tell yourself, I would always tell myself, next year it's going to be a little easier. I'm going to be a little more organized. It's going to be everything's going to be a little bit better. And, as your business grows and the demands become greater, it did not really get easy. And even up until 2018 for me, when I had to be the hero of the business still and run all these leads, I think I ran over 600 leads and service calls in 2018, like 635. You just will wear yourself out. And for about 15 years, I ran a crew, and then I would do estimates at night, and I would do most of my appointments on Saturday and then work on Sundays doing my estimates, writing them up. So, it was the badge of honor of look how hard I can work and look how awesome I am. And it's just part of the green industry. And, people, I don't hear a lot of people complaining about it. They'll get worn out from it. But it's kind of like that warrior mentality for sure.
Yeah, and I feel like I know this in other industries too, because, being on the accounting side, and I have associates that do taxes, which I do not do because I chose not to. I love the business side so much more, but we do accounting and we coordinate with our tax people, and they almost have like this similar concept in their business where it's like you work your guts out, you grind away, you get through it, you take that deep breath, and you're just so worn out. You're like, yeah, we'll get to it again next year. And then as the year progresses, you kind of forget the things that were really hard until you're back in the trenches again. But there are things I know in this industry that can be done to make it a little bit easier if you put the work in after the 100 days of hell and be mindful of it. Like what are those things? But what are things that happen in businesses during this season that are challenging for this industry?
So, and I'm going to share from my experience and from our coaching clients' experience. So the things that happen are people get nervous in the wintertime that they're not going to have enough work or they're not going to have enough employees. And then, spring breaks and they have the phones ringing off the hook. So the challenge is like, how do you manage your time? And you have to go on so many sales calls, but you can't go on all of them because the clients are not qualified, or the people who want to be clients aren't all qualified. So you really have to you want to get to everybody, but you really have to be strategic about who you're going to, meet with. And then, so you go from not having a lot of work in the winter, doing very little, to, oh my God, I have to sell every job to everybody. And that can really end up biting you because you just can't do that much work. So that's one of the worst things that I've done and I've seen done in the past is, trying to sell every job to everybody who calls and getting totally overbooked with work. And one of the biggest mistakes I see people, the mindset is, oh, I don't have enough work going into the spring, so they lower the prices. That's the biggest sin. Because what you'll see is all the cheap guys get filled up really quick in the spring, and then if you stick to your prices, you'll get filled up too, but you'll get booked with higher dollar value work. So that we're not going to have enough work, so I need to discount. That's probably the biggest sin. And then the other one is then we get overwhelmed with work and we start thinking we're going to throw bodies at it. We're going to have 3-man mowing crews, which is, if you're running a 3-man mowing crew, we need to talk because I can show you how much money that's costing you. You're paying, we call it an audience crew because there's one guy watching. And we have years and years of data that prove that 3-year mowing crew on residential lawns is not beneficial. But so they throw an extra guy in a crew thinking it's going to help, and it just drains, their wall even further. And, not billing and not getting your estimates out as fast. So, not doing your paperwork so the bookkeeper can get the estimates out, the bills out, and also not taking the time to do a real proper detailed estimate. You start making up numbers and throwing things on paper, and it's not based on a solid estimating system. So those are kind of the things that people go through when it starts up.
Yeah, so it sounds like this high pressure environment, you're rolling into your season, suddenly you're overwhelmed, and then you're being reactionary versus responsive. And it sounds to me too that in some situations, the lack of systems or processes to lean on is causing some of this overwhelm and these pain points, or these reactionary responses to the challenges or problems, to where it's like, okay, what's going to fix this? And you just start throwing ideas at it instead of a known solution that might work. And I know I've talked to clients before where they're like, oh, we're just so busy, we're swamped, we have this much time, there's been rain, we can't deliver this. Well, I think we need to hire more people. And they'll go into this, survival mode, which I know we've talked about the survival trap several times on our episodes. And it seems like the survival trap just kicks in as like the go-to blueprint to solve, everything. And some of these things, though, they might go, oh, I'm going to go hire somebody. That's going to take more time to hire somebody to put them in place than it is to actually just coordinate to get the work done.
Yeah, and I've learned different techniques over the years to slow the roll down, be a little more selective for who you're going to work for or where you're going to work, shrinking market areas, making sure that, you have to kind of make sure to have the phone call with the customer before you go out there and make sure you're clear on what their expectations are, and then also share your expectations if you're going to work with them instead of just running out there to do a quote. And same thing with hiring, like taking your time to hire the right people up front, saves a lot of time in the long run because you're not replacing people. So instead of just hiring people and throwing bodies in there, and like we're recording this now, it's in the middle of May. But if you are like, we're only 6 weeks away from July 4th, right? So if you have too many bodies now in the middle of the summer, you're going to have too many bodies. So if you hire and then you have too many bodies who really aren't contributing, you're going to really have too many people who are not contributing when things slow down in the summer. So just being strategic about who's on your team, the utilization of your workforce, and you don't have to take a job for everybody with everybody. And, that's a big thing. And also making sure that you're getting your billing out. So having a meeting that we set up weekly that's scheduled we do it on Thursday to make sure the bills are getting, invoices are going out. And so we're collecting our money fast. Because one of the things I had someone share with me, they kind of didn't bill that often. They didn't send invoices out that often because they didn't want it to look like they needed the money. And I'm not 100% sure where that came from, but I always want my clients to know that I am actually doing this to get money, because that's how I pay my team and that's how I pay my bills. So I do need the money. I do need their money. I need it quickly because I have to pay all my people and all my vendors. And I did an impact study a few years ago interviewing my vendors, and the number one impact on the vendors wasn't buying a lot of goods from them during the year. It was being paid on time. So, making sure that I did my billing on time, and how I did that was by scheduling to get it out every Thursday.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because as business owners, we can have these fixed ideas and make assumptions on how things should get done or when they should get done. And if we let those get in the way of our day-to-day operations, it can really mess up the cash flow or even our, how we're delivering our services. So it's sometimes we have to step back and go, what's logical, versus illogical when it comes to how we're managing our business and what's getting in our way. And why are we doing these things? What is it serving? What's the outcome? What are the goals around this? In an ideal world, what would this look like? And, taking away those assumptions and those fixed ideas that we might have as business owners.
Yeah, and so there's the business side of this, and then there's also the personal side. So, I did it all. I got married, I had kids, I was running my business. And so you're getting home late at night, you're tired, you might be a little grumpy. You're working weekends, I would bring challenges home with me. And now I've been married for 32 years. My wife has heard about every client, every employee. And so the rule now is if I come home and talk about an employee or a client, that I have to fire them, because if they're that big of a problem that I bring them to my living room or my bedroom, they cannot be in my life. So I have to be very careful about what I talk about at home, because that means whoever I'm talking about is going out of my business or out of my life in some capacity if I'm complaining. Now, if I just mention it, oh, we did this nice job, it came out really nice, that's one conversation. But if she hears it more than twice, the third time is, it's time to go. That client or employee has to go. So we bring a lot of this stuff home, and that's really not beneficial to raising our kids. It's not beneficial to being married. So learning how to balance that stress personally and professionally, it can be a big challenge.
Yeah, and I think too that some of this can be avoided, because we've all had years in business where, we get judgy about our team or what they're not doing or what they should be doing. And we're like, what are they thinking? Why can't they do this work? It's not that hard. We just did this last season. Like, this guy's been doing this for like 6 years. How does he not have this figured out by now? So all of those, critical thoughts that kind of come in to where we have these WTF moments with our team at the launch of the season. And I have found with our clients when we work with them, kind of one of the big aha moments is that reboarding process that is great to put into place. And if your team is off for the season, or even if they're focused on another service in the off season, making time and a plan to reboard your team in the new season can be an absolute game changer on how the 100 days of hell are going to play out.
Yeah, reboarding is a huge thing, and we do it for the admin side, like pay and benefits and how days off and all that. And then, but also for the production side, and we call it, we'll do a practicing and we call it round days. We'll have discussions about what each, as we're changing rounds. So we're even doing it in season, like if we're going to go from spraying back to spreading or spreading to spraying or seeding, having that kind of reboarding to revisit that. One of the things that I started doing, putting right in my calendar, was like days, like every year I get frustrated about May 10th because of, whatever it is. So just knowing ahead of time that certain things are going to happen. And the same customers also like call about the same things at the
Mm.
same time of the year every year. So, also knowing that. And, we had a lot of long-term employees here. So we know that this person's going to struggle when we switch to this. So he needs a little more time. So kind of being proactive on giving people space or time to practice or refresh. But a lot of it can be, it's very predictable, a lot of the behavior, but it seems every year it's like new again for me, it was probably the first 5-10 years, it was really new. And then 10 to 20 years, it was kind of like, well, this must be how it is, right? It's just every year it sucks and it's a challenge. And then 20 to 30 years, it was like, okay, how do we fix this? And then after the 30 years, it was like, all right, we have it dialed in. These are the expectations. We have to start to spring off slow. This is what's going to happen. We even have it tracked like when all the calls are going to come in. And I put that up. I post a big graph up on the board. So my team sees that the majority of our calls are going to come in this 12-week period. Don't think it's going to be the whole year. It feels like the whole year when you're getting that many calls in the spring. It feels like your whole life is nothing but this. But that's why I do visuals so my team can see, okay, these are the main 4 or 5 weeks we're getting all these phone calls. So to be ready, and then it shows when it tails off at the end of May, so they know. So it took me 30 years, and that's why we do the coaching, so people don't have to figure it out in that long and be a little more predictable about when things are going to break and when customers are going to call.
Yeah. And so I feel like we've talked about like the people side of it, right? With our team members, to where like reboarding can help them, talking about what's coming, continuing to share like the expectations of like, hey, invoicing starts here, these services start here. This is what's happening, having those conversations that you were talking about, even though when you're switching services. And then there's the customer side, to where it's like communicating the expectations. And that's one of the things I know I spent a lot of time improving in our company. And then in addition to that, talking to clients about it, to where they're going, well, what else can I do, to let our clients know about expectations, and really communicating like, what's next? What do you expect? How can we help you? And I know in your business, you guys have worked for years to improving this process, and we've worked with clients on improving this process. What are some things that you guys do that you feel has helped define customer expectations, especially during the launch of a new season?
So one of the biggest things that we do is when we do estimates, we let them know when we're going to get back to them. Because one of the things, and I've called up contractors and I meet with the guy, and the guy says, "Oh, I'll get back to you with an estimate." And my wife first starts going, "When's he going to get back to you?" I said, "Well, he said he's going to get back to me." So then a week goes by and she's like, "Did the guy call back?" I'm like, "No, he didn't call. I'll call him." So I call him. I leave a message. She's like, "Did you call the guy?" I'm like, "Yeah, I called the guy." So now there's all this stress. I haven't even bought the job yet, and I have all this stress between me and my wife because I don't know when he's going to get back to me. So one of the biggest things is to set the schedule of when we're going to get back to people with that estimate or the quote, because it keeps us on schedule with our estimates and quotes, and also it takes all that stress off of my clients. Either the husband, the wife, or whoever's getting the quote. There's always more than one person involved. So it takes that stress right off, and that makes it. And if you do that, you'll be one of the very few people in all of contracting who does that. Another thing I've done with clients to keep our schedule is, and I don't tell our clients this, but only because I want to keep that week open. So I keep 1 week open in May. I don't schedule any production at the beginning of the season. It always gets filled up. What happens is people add to jobs, the jobs get bigger, they like how it looks, they add more. And while your crew's there, it's just easier to keep them there. And also, if you have a rain day, like you were sharing, if you get 4 days of rain, I have a week open that I didn't schedule. I also will keep in May, I'll keep 1 day a week open. So we're only even scheduling 4 days a week. So if the weather's really nice, like the weather's been nice here in Connecticut, we can stay right on schedule or get a little bit ahead of schedule. But when I used to schedule 5 days a week, sell every week. We were always behind. People at graduation parties in June. People were just screaming, "When you getting here?" Now we just set the expectation of when we're going to be there. If we get a little bit ahead, we're great. We look awesome, but now we're not always behind. So setting that kind of schedule up. Also talking with my team about, hey, going into spring, this is what it's going to look like. This is why you need to show up every day. This is what it's going to look like. We're going to need you to work overtime in the spring. It's not going to last forever. It's only about 8 to 10 weeks. Because other weeks if things are going to go perfect, we won't need you. So you're going to have to work some Saturdays. So you're not going to have to work every Saturday. Don't melt down. You're not going to have to work every weekend, but you're going to have to work a few Saturdays.
And have you found communicating this information to your team has empowered your team to communicate this kind of stuff to your customers as well? So it's not just you being the messenger, but are you finding that it's empowering your team to communicate effectively and clearly to the expectations of your customers?
So two things that happen. One thing is we'll have a salesman or manager that wants to be a hero and overpromise customers. And I've been guilty of it even after I set the rules. They'll still want to be a hero. They want to be that super landscaper, over promise, and over deliver. But they can set themselves up for that's a real trap, because then it rains for 4 days and now they look like the villain. So they've learned, a couple of my salespeople and managers have learned the hard way. Just stick to the schedule. There's a reason why we leave that week open. There's a reason why we don't jam the schedule up in May. But it also, when we get behind, we used to get behind, it weighed heavy on my team. I could see the pressure on their face. It's 5:30. We have to finish this job because we're 45 minutes away from the shop. We cannot drive back here tomorrow to finish for an hour. So that means we're there till 6:30. And, that if you're doing that day after day after day, working these guys 11, 12 hours a day, because we start at 7 in the morning, that will wear people out. And knowing that we're behind all the time and listening to me or the managers, "Oh, we're behind, we're behind, we're behind." They feel like they put us behind. They feel like it's their fault we're behind. And the crews are working so hard. It was really us and our scheduling and our expectation setting with the clients.
Right. Yeah, and I can see how that could create stress with the team there's other factors that come into play, but it would seem that if you guys are communicating about it and talking about it as things shift and change, that might relieve some of the pressure, or allow a different narrative to occur, because we've all learned that no communication is not good communication. And if we don't communicate, then they create the narrative. Like there's this whole story, and I think it's just related to us being human, right? There's this whole story like, oh, my lawn guy isn't showing up. They're not here. be this or that, or they're not great at service, or because there's no communication, even though it's pouring down rain outside. And I know this last year, during this last season, rain and wind it just rained, havoc on the industry, and especially in some areas to where it's like they were behind, 80,000 plus in production in some companies. And so our customers will look outside, and even though it's pouring down rain, they're like, where's this technician? He's not doing a good job. The wife is like, why haven't they come out and done this? And the husband's like, I don't know. Like, let me figure this out. And, so I think that that's a good point, is the more we communicate, it changes the storyline and what our clients can make up with our services.
Yeah, in our team too, our team will communicate different things. They'll make up their own narrative. My guys will make up their own narrative if we don't share what the narrative is and what we want the narrative to be. But right, the customers, they're inside, they're inside their cushy house. They go to the mall, they go shop, and they drive back. They pull into the garage, they shut the garage door. They don't even, weather's like, oh, it rained for 3 days. A lot of times they're not aware. So here's the challenge with communication, right? We have to communicate in so many different ways. Before it used to be the phone, you'd call people up, and then it was email. So you had the phone and email, and then it was texting. So it's the phone and texting and email, and now it's Facebook messaging and Google messaging. And there's there's other ways of different sending. Many people have multiple emails, so they get all this email junk, so they don't read their emails. So, finding out how to communicate to your customers, or just saying, we're going to communicate to you in multiple ways, and that's just what life is. So we developed, at my company, we have a text. We can text right through the computer, so it's not going through somebody's phone. We have a person who's an inbound person who just handles inbound phone calls. And we have an outbound person to make. Now, this is a dream situation for me because, right, before I was doing the phone calls, or my office manager was doing all the phone calls. So, now we have someone who just makes outbound phone calls. And it took this was over 30 something years. But if you don't have that, which most people are not going to have that.
Core Growth Strategies provides business growth management solutions through cloud accounting, bookkeeping, and strategic business consulting programs. Our team works with small businesses in lawn care and landscape and trade industries throughout the U.S. We increase our clients' business acumen by creating business performance transparency through financials and strategic advisement based on industry best practices and benchmarks. Our experienced team provides support, guidance, and coaching, thereby allowing our clients to connect with viable data and discover their own solutions. Core Growth Strategies programs and services are designed to get your business from where it is now to where you have always dreamed it to be. Visit us today at coregrowthstrategies.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Don't miss our exclusive limited time podcast special. Just mention promo code GPA Pro to any member of our team during your complimentary consultation, or enter the promo code on our site when you sign up for one of our online programs. That's promo code GPA Pro.
So how do you communicate to your customers? Choose one or two ways. The texting is the easiest. You can text from your computer or text from your phone and reach a lot of people really quickly and easily. And people read text. That's the effective part of that. So, typically, guys who run lawn care landscape businesses are high executing and not high doing. They're doing people and not high communication. So if you're not high communication or you don't want to talk to people, get somebody on your team that will handle some of that so you don't have to. But how you win today is communication. And I think, we did a show, a talk, it might have been Facebook Live or one of our mastermind meetups, where we surveyed over 180 reviews, 5-star reviews our clients had that we coach. And communication was the number one most common word in these 5-star reviews.
Yeah. Yeah, it's what, we could refer to as their area of innovation, right? It's this huge opportunity to how they're servicing their customers that makes all the difference to where even some of our pumpkin plan customers that we've worked with closely over the years, they have found that their customers will pay more because the level and quality of communication that they can rely on from the, hey, we're going to be out today between these hours and these hours. And so, they know how to tend to their pets outdoors, or even, hey, I noticed you left your garage door open and nobody's home. Is there something I can do to close it for you? So just the extra care, that extra step of communication that some of our clients have implemented in their business to where their customers are like, I will never leave you because I trust you on my property. I trust you to communicate. You guys are always clear and transparent with the services. And there's just that trust that's continuously being built. And, that's worth every penny that they're paying. And they don't care if they raise their prices, $50 or $100. They're like, yeah, it is what it, well, you're the best. You're the best in this industry, in this area. So, yeah, I want to keep you as my service provider.
And trust is huge. So one of the things that we do, we treat a lot of lawns, and what's common in the lawn industry is the guy's not treating the whole lawn. Company's not treating the whole lawn. It's called ghosting, right? So we'll get calls and the customer will say, oh, I didn't see him in the backyard. He didn't treat the backyard. So we actually send that technician back to go physically show that client where he treated and show the client where the fertilizer is. And almost 90% of the time, the person goes, well, I didn't actually look.
Right.
But just the fact that we're willing to have a tech go back and show them is usually enough. But, and there's been a couple of occasions where the tech didn't treat the backyard because the clothes were up on the clothesline and they left a note, unserviceable clothesline, or it had rained like 2 or 3 days and it was too wet to put the Z spray on the back. So they did it with a hand spreader. So there was no tire marks, but the customer was looking for tire marks. So, those are like incidences that we handle them as soon as a person calls. Typically they'll call the same day. But, you have to build that trust up, and communication is the easiest way to do that. So absolutely. And it's time consuming, but it has to be really intentional.
Yeah, and I know there's even technology, because one of the things I love is learning about the technology that's available in this industry, and kind of like what's up and coming, what's new, what are people in this industry really talking about, and how is it going to help the industry, or even, kind of cause new problems, right? It's a new solution that has yet another new problem. So I know that there's a lot of technology out there these days, and some of them are built right into your software suite for this industry, where, your technician is out there with a tablet or an iPhone, and it's tracking where they service. So they could report while on site where they serviced and what they serviced. And it also does it by the GPS tracking and reports it in the software. So the customers can log in, and it's even a snapshot that a customer service person can send them and say, this is what was reported to us for your service call today. Please see the service areas. And maybe they might say, yeah, we missed this area. We'll send somebody out. Thanks for bringing it to our attention. Or, it looks like we serviced everything. Do you have any other questions that we can, address for you? So you're not saying you're wrong, but you're saying, hey, we did our due diligence. How else can we help? And just continuing to have a constructive conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And we use a product called Company Cam that we can take photos of and document things like there was all the clothesline was full of clothes. We couldn't treat, we didn't want to get anywhere near it, or there was water. My techs will take pictures and stuff like that. And that helps quite a bit, because then we can send it to them and they'll forget about that they have, 4 cars parked on the lawn or whatever it is. So it is super, super important. So let's talk about like some tips that we could offer to help, everyone get through this 100 days of hell and not have to be such a warrior, not have to wait 30 years to get it dialed in. I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to wait 30 years.
Yeah, and I feel like some of this stuff, it's things you can start thinking about now, right? When you're experiencing those pain points or those challenges, some of these things you can start implementing now that will kind of relieve that pressure. And some of these things are things that you can put into your plan to implement. So maybe you can't do it right now because you're just really underwater and you're just trying to get through this season. But, don't forget, what can you do this next season to relieve the pressure and make things smoother? So, these are some of the tips that we kind of gathered today to where maybe those 100 days of hell, won't be experienced as much as the title is descriptive. So, it might make it a little bit easier on people. And the first one is to create a schedule. So you want to create a schedule that outlines your service obligations for the busiest season, like your busiest time of year. So this will set you up to see what upcoming appointments you have, what your routes are, your jobs that you have, on your list to do. And a lot of tools are built into the software that this industry has. And I think that there's several software suites out there. One I really like is Field Routes. I've seen Service Autopilot, like what they can do as well. That's another good one. And another software that I know is out there, I'm not a huge fan of, but is the Real Green software. And so there are some softwares that can help you create an effective schedule, for your lawn care and your landscape services and even some snow removal. So no matter what time of year it is, you and your team have a really good grip. And if schedules change because of the weather, or clotheslines, clothes or dogs or whatever it is that's impacting your services to be delivered, you can easily, change your game using your software and it not have to create too much chaos for you and your team.
Yeah, and the schedule you can, like I was talking earlier about, leave a week open in May, only schedule 4 days a week. One of the other things is we're very careful about like what we schedule and when. So, in the spring, there's certain things that have to get done. So if it doesn't have to be done in the spring, like a lot of our hardscape work, we're pushing that out into June, July, and August because we have to get plants in the ground in the spring. And a lot of people will do, they'll do anything whenever. And we learned that is really tough. We'll take one hardscape job in May that has to be done. But we're not going to book a whole month out in May because we have to get plants in the ground and we have to get like softscaping done. And so we'll push that out and we'll start selling June, July, and August for that, just because of that. And the other thing is like we don't schedule lawn installations in the spring. They're all done in the fall because if you're going to do them in the spring, people are going to be disappointed because they don't make it through the summer and you're going to have to redo it again. And you're going to have to spend July and August getting the phone calls with these people complaining. So like most guys who in the Northeast who have been in the business for a long time, typically will not do spring lawn installs because the customer's not happy. It's lots of phone calls, disappointment, and extra work when you could be doing things the plantings when people really appreciate it. It looks beautiful, makes it through the summer because you've got it in the spring, and it's a win-win. So taking the time to schedule correctly and not overbook yourself.
Yeah, and the next one I feel ties into that, which is prioritize tasks. And this is something I know you and I have learned as leaders in our business as we've grown and added more team members, is we need to communicate and kind of teach that decision tree around what tasks take priority. And because our team, just because we say something, our team automatically might think, oh, I have to go do that right now. This is what they said. And I know my team will do this. So I have to actually say, if I say something I want done, I have to add the expectations and timeline to it, or they're going to drop everything and run off and go do it. So I think the prioritizing tasks, not only us prioritizing as business owners, but teaching our team what tasks are a priority and why, and having those conversations around them are important.
Yes, and that urgent and important, and urgent and not important, and not important and not urgent, and making sure that the team and ourselves were focusing on what's urgent and important. But if everything is urgent and important, that means we haven't done enough like prep work, because there should only be a certain percentage of things that are urgent and important. So absolutely making sure that we schedule our priorities. Like you need to have your marketing plan done well before you start the season. I can't be deciding what we're going to be doing for marketing the third week of April, or what equipment we're going to buy. There are things that need to be done beforehand, and there's things that can wait. Painting the mower chutes, that can wait until the winter, or just other things like you need to be making sure that you're doing billable work that serves your client and your company's goals.
Yes. So the next one is to streamline your operations. And this is really, it's a long game, right? To streamline your operations. Every year, making little by little changes in your business helps. And I'm a big fan of using technology to streamline our operations. I love automating processes, from billing to online payments to using mobile apps, eliminating paper. I know that's something that I kind of talked to you about, Steve, in your company, is how can we eliminate the paper that you guys use? So what are the things that you can see in your company to streamline? And also looking at what equipment you're using to deliver your services. Is there better equipment that is out there? Like, we have some companies we've worked with to where it's like they don't use larger equipment, they use smaller equipment, they use handheld equipment, and that gets the job done faster. So there's lots of opportunity around streamlining your operations and getting clearing up your team capacity by doing this.
Yeah, you can streamline. How we focus on streamlining is making sure that the technicians and the landscape installers are doing landscaping, installing, and tech work. So, we have people who make the posting signs. We have people that make their route books up. We have people that clean their trucks. So I need that guy to be treating lawns. I can hire other people to do a lot of the other work. It's easier to find people to do admin work than lawn tech. It's easier to hire a company to come in and clean the truck than have my lawn tech do it. I need him to spend the extra hour of the day treating like an extra 2 or 3 lawns. So streamlining that. And, even though we do use more paper than I would like, part of streamlining it is we have our route sheet that has a street view of the house. It has an overhead view of the house. It's marked out in green where to treat the property. There's notes right on that sheet. Each customer has a customer number and an address. So people can find it. It's linked with company cam. So if they can't find the house on the GPS, or because sometimes it can be difficult, we geocoded all the customers. So we had someone place an actual pin in. So when we go to company cam, it will actually tell the guy where to park the truck if he follows the directions through company cam. So those are like things that will help streamline it, is to keep the guys who are actually doing the production, and don't have them do anything that is not producing a dollar, or not anything, very little. The less they have to do the minutia of paperwork, phone calls, cleaning, repairing, keep them, doing the production out in the field. If my guys are not making me any money at my shop, I need them in the field.
And I know you even have somebody do the lawn signs. Like, that's something to where it's like your techs don't have to deal with it. They just grab a bundle, throw it in their truck, and they're off.
Yeah, all the lawn signs are pre-made. They're in a bundle of 20. They just have to write the date on it and put it in the ground. Yeah, my lawn techs, we literally, they don't do any call aheads. They don't do any repairs. They don't make their own signs. They don't do any routing. They don't mix the big tank. We need them in their truck out on lawns. We just
Right.
have too many lawns to treat to have them doing things that anybody else can do. Because in the state of Connecticut, my lawn science technicians have to be licensed applicators. So I need to utilize all their skills and talents.
Yeah. So the next one, and I feel like this can contribute again to the previous one of streamline your operations, but is hire seasonal staff. So looking at your business model and considering what seasonal staff you may need to help you during your busiest season, this could also ease the workload of your current team. And I think too, the other piece of this is planning ahead, right? Always having one extra guy that's part of your team to fill in. And though at the beginning of the season, you're like, I don't know if I'm going to have the work for this. And I've heard this so many times. Yeah, I hired an extra guy. I don't know. And then come to find out they're like, man, I'm so glad I hired that extra guy because he filled in for this and he filled in for that. And in fact, I should have hired two extra guys. So can you talk on that a little bit of how you've seen this play out in busy seasons?
Yeah. So what happens? We end the previous season with a highly, experienced crew, and they're in good shape and everything. So we think we'll go through another year like that. Well, spring comes, and hopefully, there's growth in your company. But then also, depending on the size of the company, there's always somebody out for some reason. Sick kids, somebody's having a baby, some dog's sick. They had to get their wisdom teeth pulled. So having the extra guy to help pick that slack up and keep everybody, so they're not working 65 hours a week, or, we're not behind every day because one person is out. Having that seasonal guy can be very helpful. And sometimes we'll bring college kids, even at the end of May, just to help the mulch crew kind of finish up. I can stick a college kid on to help with mulch and move one of the higher skill set guys over to get finished with the plantings. So even in that late May to June, you can still bring in some seasonal help. And sometimes these college kids, they're only going to be here for 2.5 months. I mean, so you're
Mhm.
talking 10 weeks, but they can be a big help. Like we have gardens at our office that are display gardens, so they can do weeding. There's just other things that bringing in some seasonal help can definitely help. Now, that's not hiring, they know they're seasonal. That's not hiring a full-time person all the time to help at that time just because you're overwhelmed in April and May. That's more like strategically knowing that they're going to be there for a certain number of weeks.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's also a good recruiting technique to where if you do hire seasonal people, they're going to see if they really like the industry or doing the type of work. And then as they continue, to be seasonal, they might even be interested in a permanent position when you guys have an opening. So I
Yeah.
kind of like that seasonal work method to where it's like you can kind of use it as, a recruiting tool to kind of test out some of your people that might come on board permanently.
Yeah, it is. It's a good way to. I mean, we've had people that just came part-time to shovel mulch, and they've been here for 10, 12 years. Now they're tech supervisors. They were in an industry that slowed down in the spring, and now they work for us. They've been working for us for years. So it absolutely is a good way to get some people, because there's other industries that are slow in the spring, like the oil delivery business slows down. Right about now in mid-May. So sometimes they have extra drivers, and other industries kind of slow down before, and they pick up maybe later in the summer. So the other big part of this way to keep everything on schedule and keep customers happy, we talked about it earlier, is the communication, and just be aware and be intentional about that, and let customers know what the schedule looks like. And that takes a lot of tension and stress off of us and the customer.
Yeah, and that's just around communicating like delays or changes in scheduling, being clear about why and let them know, hey, if anything changes, I will call you back. A team member will call you back. And just to make sure that not only your team, but the clients are on the same page so there's no surprises. And it's crazy how much value just clear and regular communication holds in a business.
Yeah, there's jokes. I think, I don't know if it's Vermont. I don't want to make anybody from Vermont upset, but they have a saying in Vermont, we'll be there Tuesday. You just don't know which Tuesday. So, you don't want to be the Tuesday guy. You want to make sure your customers know when you're going to show up.
Right.
The next one is keeping your equipment in good condition, in good shape. You do the maintenance in the spring. Pre-spring, you think all your equipment's ready to go, and then it starts to break. So just realizing that, hey, you're probably going to have some broken equipment during the year, and we always like to have an extra vehicle. We typically will keep an older vehicle and get the newer ones and keep one or two old vehicles as the backup. But just realize, keep the backups in really good shape, and then have a backup piece of equipment, so you can get things fixed when they need to be fixed. Because the cheapest way to take care of any equipment is to take care of it immediately when it's broken, and don't push it out. Because you get one bad blade, and then next thing you know, the spindle goes, then the spindle housing is no good, and then it won't keep belts. So you just went through a spindle shaft, a spindle housing, another set of belts. When if you had an extra mower and you could just swap that, get it fixed right away, you save your belts, your spindle housing, and everything. I've learned that the hard way. I pushed equipment, and it ended up costing me money, time, and frustration.
Yeah, and I feel like this has been a big challenge for people we've worked with in this industry is knowing, like, okay, I have an equipment maintenance schedule, and these are the things I need to tend to, and really tracking how much you're investing in that equipment. And we have some tools on this that we use in our membership toolbox, and we've done some presentations on this. Is being able to track your equipment, its life cycle, its maintenance, and when to sell that piece of equipment, because you're just wasting time and money, and you're never going to get that money back. It's going to be sunk costs. So I think that keeping your equipment in good condition, having a process to support the maintenance of this, you won't get blindsided. You're not going to get blindsided when you're in the thick of it, trying to, get your team out there in the heat of the season. And you won't get blindsided later where you finally realize, how much money did we sink into this? Like, we're never going to get that back. So I think that it's a double-edged sword. So not only keeping your equipment in good condition, it's going to serve you in the long run, and it's going to serve your profit in the long run.
Yeah, don't keep your equipment too long. I've done that. We've all done that. You put $2,500 in a transmission, then it needs a rear end, and then the bed is all rusted out. $5 or $6 grand for the bed. It's just a losing proposition. Yeah, you're not saving any money. I've really come to realize it's easier to know how much the payments are, on the newer equipment, than it is to have these, like, every time you bring a truck to a repair place, it's $2,400. It's $4,500. There's no $500 fix anymore. So, and every time a truck is out of work, it's not producing any money. So it's double dipping every hour that it's off the road. So keep your fleet fresh. People say, "Oh, I don't want any debt." Well, it's not honestly debt if you have an asset that offsets a liability. So that's not true debt. Debt is when there's no asset to offset the liability. And also, if you have a liability payment for a mower or a truck that's actually generating 50 or 60% gross profit margin, now your equipment becomes a profit center, which is a powerful way to run a business.
Yeah.
All right. And last is taking care of your team. Ensure that your team gets enough food, rest, hydration, and you want to, the owner needs to keep that kind of upbeat, happy kind of tone. It's hard when things aren't going right. It's hard when customers are mad at you, and the weather's not on your side. But we had a huge discussion. I was in Detroit with a bunch of leaders in this growing kind of leadership mission mindset. And we were talking about how the owner or the manager shows up to work can set the tone for the entire company for the entire day or week. So, if we want people to show up really positive and energized and engaged, we need to show that to them.
Yeah, and I think there's an easy opportunity to do this. I know at our retreat we were talking about, the power of huddles, like having a team huddle. every day. And it doesn't have to be long. It can be like 5 minutes, 7 minutes. And it's just kind of bringing, the team around, your production team, and saying like, hey, and we have clients that do this, which was a huge inspiration for sharing this process. And we can see how upbeat their team is to go out there and hit the ground running after they leave this daily huddle. And they talked about, one person talked about, hey, this is the weather. This is what you want to be mindful of today. Stay hydrated, watch out for your team member, take breaks in the shade, things like that. So they even provided, some things in the break room, like bananas and some, extra hydration things that they could put into their water and stuff, so they could take out some electrolytes out in the field with them. So they're just very supportive. The team appreciated it, and even having conversations around that. So how do you stay safe and healthy, working in the heat or working in the field or putting in those extra time? And I think having that group conversation just for a few minutes every day around this lets the team know like, hey, I see you. I care about you. How can I support you? This is what I'm going to do, which can make all the difference in a highly engaged team. And then them feeling like, hey, I'm going to put in that extra little bit today and every day because I feel seen and heard. So I think that's a really good point, is even when the going gets tough, care for your team. When things get hard, don't chew on them, prop them up and support them. And I think that's a really good point.
Absolutely. Shut up, get in a truck, go to work. That doesn't fly anymore. That people don't want to work in that company. So, finding ways to support them and connect to them and show appreciation that's the new way of business. It's humanness and supporting our team.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, I hope this helped you. If you were in the middle of your 100 days of hell, or if you're near your end, or two-thirds of the way through it, wherever you're at with it, I hope you got a couple good points. I've been in it. I have been through it with you, and I've experienced it. And I can remember coming home from work some days and not even knowing what day of the week it was. I was so tired and so busy, and I get home from work and the kids have already they've taken their baths, they're ready for bed, and at least I got to read a bedtime story and fall asleep with them, and then get back up and go to bed. And so I hope this was helpful in many ways.
Yep, and it's something that I know it's hard right now, but making those small changes after the season is over, or even maybe a few during the season, it can make the next season a little bit more bearable. And it is a journey. It's not something that's going to change overnight. We may have high expectations and ambitions as business owners, but no, let your team help you in these changes, decide what's most important, and maybe even what's the easiest one for you to change that will make it better next year.
All right. This was a good one. I like it. Thank you, Christine.
All right. Thank you. We'll see y'all next time.
Thanks for listening to the Green Profit Academy Pros Podcast,
the show that digs into the challenges of growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit. Core Growth Strategies provides business growth management solutions through cloud accounting, bookkeeping, and strategic business consulting programs. Our team works with small businesses in lawn care and landscape and trade industries throughout the U.S. We increase our clients' business acumen by creating business performance transparency through financials and strategic advisement based on industry best practices and benchmarks. Our experienced team provides support, guidance, and coaching, thereby allowing our clients to connect with viable data and discover their own solutions. Core Growth Strategies programs and services are designed to get your business from where it is now to where you have always dreamed it to be. Visit us today at coregrowthstrategies.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Don't miss our exclusive limited time podcast special. Just mention promo code GPA Pro to any member of our team during your complimentary consultation, or enter the promo code on our site when you sign up for one of our online programs. That's promo code GPA Pro.